Ralph Breaks the Internet came out the same week as Creed 2. And so that meant two movies that I loved got a sequel and came out on the same week. That was a pretty exciting week for movies, if you exclude Robin Hood. Yeah, just forget about that movie. Ralph Breaks the Internet is of course a sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, which is an animated film that I really loved. It was one of my favorite animated movies of that year. The sequel isn't as good, but it's still a really good animated film. Ralph and Vanellope are best friends, and they hang out together after hours after the arcade closes, and they're having some fun. But Vanellope is getting a little bit bored with the 4 tracks that her arcade game has, and wants something a little bit more exciting, something a little bit new, because she's a racer at heart. Ralph tries to help out, but of course something backfires, and it causes Vanellope's game to break. In order to save the racing game, they need a new steering wheel. They need a new part for it. So Ralph and Vanellope go onto the internet to find eBay to hopefully get this product, this wheel, and then they find out that they're video game characters, they don't have money, so they gotta make real money, or digital money, and things escalate from there. I definitely enjoyed this sequel. There was a lot of moments that I did find funny, and there was a lot of entertaining moments that, granted, aren't as good as the first one, but ones that entertained me. Now, it does feel that there is less video game Easter eggs in this movie, or at least upon first viewing there seemed to be far less than there was in the original. In this one it feels like the Easter eggs are more internet related and world building of creating this whole world or a physical representation of the internet. So basically a highly more creative and way better version of the Emoji Movie. Granted, that's not that hard to do. I found the world building of the internet really great. I thought that it represented it very well. There was a lot of technical aspects and a lot of different nooks and crannies that actually felt creative and felt like it works. You also might look at it and say, oh, it's just a lot of product placement with all these big websites, but it kind of makes sense. If you're going to be in the world of the internet, these sort of big sites need to sort of be on display, whether it in the background or characters actually going to these sites. And I will say that it felt like the sites that were used in the plot felt like it made sense to be put in the plot. When they actually physically go to a site, it doesn't feel like it's randomly placed just to have a product advertisement, like the Emoji Movie. I love the animation of the film. It was very vibrant, and there was also moments where the animation was glitchy on purpose or better imitated the movements of 8-bit or 16-bit type of movement in arcades, which was in the first one as well, but this one also has an extra thing where online there's this big racing sort of apocalypse sort of game that they go into, and when they actually have players rather than the characters in the game, they move differently and move how you would expect to see them move if you were looking at another player in that game, if that makes sense. I think most video gamers would understand that, how the characters move differently from the actual characters in the game, you know, the players, the player characters, versus the NPCs, the non-playable characters. There's some animation towards the end with clones. I won't say too much about it, it's just there's clones and duplicates in this movie that crawl on top of each other almost like World War Z zombies, and then form into something, and that's pretty creepy, but it's also really good animation. I will say when it comes to the humor, there's a wide range of different humor. Some humor is satire, some humor is very meta, some humor is very simple like slapstick, some humor is a little bit gross out. But when the humor is that generalized and that much of a range, usually it turns out to be a generic, really bad movie. But I feel that the humor worked on all levels, and I enjoyed it. I honestly don't think there was any humor in the movie that was groan-worthy for me, or cringe-worthy. I also do like that the film focuses more on the development and more on the relationships between our two main characters, between Ralph and Vanellope and their friendship, and the conflicts that happen as one friend wants more and becomes attracted to the Apocalypse racing game and wants to stay, while Ralph wants to keep her as a friend and doesn't want her to be long distance and doesn't want her to basically leave him. And I will say, to some people the plot might not be too good because it might feel like it's all over the place when it comes plot-wise, because the main story, the main focus is really beneath the plot. The plot is just a means for these characters to get from place to place and to find something and have a goal, while the real story of the movie is their relationship, their conflict, and their internal struggles, which is something you might not expect from an animated family film. And so it might feel like the third act goes into a crazy different direction, but it's a direction that makes sense with the characters' decisions because of their relationship and because of their core beliefs. And so even though the third act gets outlandish, I really buy it because of the characters. If I have any gripes with the film, there's only a few little things. One, I wished there was a little bit more video game related stuff in this movie, especially since the first movie was so much video game related. And with the core relationships of this movie really driving the story, there's something about it that I feel like it could have touched on these relationships a little bit more throughout. It's not as, it's good, it's developed, but I feel that there should be a little bit more to really enhance the characters of this movie. But really, that's the only gripes I have with the film, and the fact that even though it is funny and I do like it and I am entertained by it, I don't find it as good as the original film. But I'm not going to hold that against the film for not being as good as the original, because a lot of sequels aren't as good as the original, and that doesn't make them bad films. And this one is a really good film. For me, Ralph Breaks the Internet has just a good enough score for me to round up to 4.5 stars. Again, I have to round up to the 4.5, so it's probably a little closer to a 4. And if you're curious, Wreck-It Ralph is a movie that I would give 5 stars to, or at least in personal enjoyment level. I don't know with my new scoring system if it would get a perfect 5, but it probably would get close to that. So, have you seen Ralph Breaks the Internet? What do you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews or movie countdowns of this year or previous years, of whatever. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.